Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. And on this show, we get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We have a big one tonight. The General Secretary of the leading opposition party, the NDC, and also the newly announced campaign coordinator for the 2024 election is joining us to talk about many things. State of their campaign, what's the message of the NDC? What kind of country will they inherit if they win? How confident are they of their chances, their relationship with the EC, and whether smaller parties will come and support them to go over the bridge? All of these and more with Fifi Abikwete when we come back. Stay with us. So welcome back. We are crossing into July, the second half of the year 2024. It means serious business for many people, particularly for politicians, because in less than 6 months we'll be voting. Fifi Abikwete is the General Secretary of the opposition NDC and also now the newly announced campaign coordinator for the 2024 campaign. Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening to you, my brother Ben, and good evening to all your very many viewers in Ghana and beyond.
Wonderful. To be General Secretary is already a big job and a busy one. They've added campaign coordinator to that. Has that always been the way it is, or this is different?
Let's say constitutionally, that's how it's supposed to have been all along.
Okay.
Because as the chief executive of the party, all things work to you. So you basically are in the center of things. So ordinarily, that should have been. So let's just say that my predecessor did not always, shall I call it, work it that way. He tended to be a bit more of almost like an operational man himself, wanted to be on the field directly. I want to be much more in the heart of the coordination in order to ensure that every piece of the puzzle is constantly watched in order to see how things operate. So that's why.
So what's the job of a campaign coordinator?
As the word goes, coordinating every aspect of the campaign. And if you listen to the announcement properly, you would have noticed that we have the structure in a way that different teams are part of the campaign. So we're going to have an outfit that is purely devoted to the flag bearer and the movement of the flag bearer. Another totally looking at the running mate and how everything goes according to that. Another one is going to be in charge of the parliamentary end of the campaign. Another one that we are calling special operations that have to do with all things that have to do everything that goes all the way to the branches. We have the national organizer is going to be in charge of the regional campaigns. So different aspects of the campaign in order to ensure everything works accordingly. Yeah.
But we understand that campaign coordination team will work under election steering committee, or is it campaign steering committee? What's that one?
All right. So effectively, as you appreciate, the day-to-day is almost like having a board and having what you call the management. So the management is what you call the campaign coordination. That's the day-to-day operations. Okay. So they are clearly monitoring everything on the day-to-day. The other one becomes more like a board that looks at everything. And then in order to be able to provide guidance, provide direction, in order to see, okay, can we maybe look at this a bit more differently? That also is a group that carries a lot more experience as well. So you want
they're much older.
You want to draw
much more experience.
Absolutely. You want to draw that experience in order for us to be able to take the campaigns where it ought to go.
What if somebody said, when they heard the names of the campaign coordination team, they expected some fresh blood? Most of the people, they are known people. We know a lot of the people who are running either the flag bearer or the vice flag bearer are known either executives or functionaries. Was there no room for some fresher blood in the team?
Oh, when it comes to a campaign, there are so many roles that different people can play. As much as possible, you want to leverage on experience. You want to ensure that those who are playing those roles are not just this is too critical a campaign to simply be looking at people without the necessary experience and track record. So that number one is our consideration. But there's still room to be able to draw. So many names will not be mentioned, but that doesn't mean that they are not going to be leveraged to ensuring that they play their key role.
We noticed the flag bearer has been meeting groups. Somehow the big rallies haven't started yet. Is there like a season for that? How does a campaign work? I'm talking generally. So is it like for between January of the election year to June, you consult, and then maybe from August, September, you start doing the rallies.
Okay.
How does it work?
Yeah, typically, let's say it this way. In this particular campaign has had the pre-campaign period.
Okay.
Pre-campaign period has been the movement of the flag bearer across all the regions, generally meeting different groups, having conversations with them, picking their thoughts, or sharing his own ideas with them as well. But these conversations all were leading towards the preparation of what we call our policy platform, which is our manifesto. Now, we now are going to formally launch the campaign and also formally launch the manifesto. That opens us to the real direct campaigning season now. Now, the campaigning season will mean movement now of the flag bearer again through all these many regions. But this time around, it's not going out with a view to now talking to people and listening to their concerns. But this time, literally coming now with his full-blown message to them. So it means, for example, in every region or different constituencies, he's now addressing everybody. It's no more just simply going to say that, oh, I'm calling a group of, let's say, market women or a group of traders and just hear them. No, this time I want to talk to all of you. At the same time, as we are talking the collective rallies that people know, what I can tell you is that this campaign is also going to be largely very retail in nature. So our emphasis is not simply to do what you call the big programs that people know, but no, we have. That's why we're talking strategy to ensuring that we are drilling down to every polling station, getting those who are directly going to be involved in the voting and being able to reach out to them, win them over. I mean, with the message that we believe is a message that will resonate, in order to ensure that come D-Day, these people will be able to turn out, I mean, to vote, and will ensure that we can protect their votes.
In covering elections since 2004 properly, I've seen 5 main issues or 5 main M's. The message, the machine, which is the operational issues for mobilizing people and counting the votes. The men, which is the people, either the candidates or the flag bearer or the parliamentarians. Then, of course, there's money, and then there's momentum. Right. Now, between message and then machine, as General Secretary and Campaign Coordinator, are you more fixated with, so is this election more about what the issues are or how the counting and the easy things go? Do you get my point? Is it more about what people want to do in terms of voting, or more about making sure people turn out, the ballot is secure, and all of these operational machination things?
All right. I would say both are going to be critical. We simply have to ensure that the message remains right. Because you need to constantly understand that election is all about winning hearts and minds. And the way to do it is to be able to articulate your message in a way that you can give confidence to the people. Especially when we're talking about a country where there seems to be a massive erosion in the trusts of the populace. You need to be able to calibrate your message in a way to be able to restore hope and let them know that, listen, we have a plan, which plan will be able to, as it were, help to restore the country to the place it ought to be. But the second part, which really have to do with machinery, and which of course combine also with men, I mean, of course, men and women. Those two are very much together. A machinery that, as it were, have to be pushed through by human resource. In this particular election, that second part is going to be absolutely critical. Because remember, we're dealing with a political party that is not an easy party to take out of power. In 2008, I mean, you were covering, so you do know. Even in that election, which everybody would have said after 8 years normally should be relatively easy for the opposition to win. It was not an easy election for us to win. I mean, we did everything we can in terms of our messaging. We did everything in terms of machinery. But even in those final moments, even the strong room of the Electoral Commission, we nearly were losing the election. So I think the Kufuor NPP, in opposition, we basically said they were really not a very good political, government. But if you compare the Kufuor NPP to the current one that we have, this iteration of the NPP is the worst, in my view, that we've ever had. It's also the most desperate. And because it's the most desperate, we anticipate that we do have to expect the worst coming from them. Now, if in the strong room of the Electoral Commission 2008, they did what they did to try to steal the election in that final moment, we believe that this particular iteration of MPP is going to do far worse. So our machinery and the men who are pushing the machinery, the whole engineering, have to be absolutely top notch, because we are dealing with people who will stop at nothing.
So you are talking about this iteration in terms of their conduct, but I'm sure you would also say that in governance. So I'm basically taking your point. If you say this NPP is worse than the Kufuor NPP,
sure,
then that would mean that their performance has been worse than the Kufuor NPP. Then that should mean that it should be easier for you to win than the 2008, because
normally,
performance-wise, if your theory is to be taken,
sure,
performance-wise, this election should be easier than 2008.
Normally, but what you must appreciate is that in the leadership we have of the NPP today, the levels of desperation that we see in them, we never saw that in President Kufuor. I mean, I was leading the communication of the NDC back in time. I mean, when President Kufuor was in power, and we really took President Kufuor on. But listen, we need to salute President Kufuor. In comparison to what we have today, oh my God. So with this particular version, not only have they, as it were, misgoverned the most, disappointed the most, but they also are the group that will stop at nothing. Remember, Kufuor did 2 elections. Okay, he won in 2000 election and won again in 2004. But in those 2 elections, we never had a situation where 8 people died on an election day simply because Kufuor needed to survive. It didn't happen. It happened in this iteration of the NPP. This version of the NPP stopped at nothing. They did that in 2020. A year before then, you saw exactly what happened now. I also Westwagon. It tells you who these guys are. They stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing to try to literally take away the verdict and the will of the people of Ghana. So if you do know who they are, President Kufuor then was exiting. And it was because he had that kind of capacity to say, things have to be done well. That was what saved the country. In Nana Akufo-Addo, we don't believe that he's going to have that. We believe that Nana Akufo-Addo is that desperate that he will do anything possible to ensure there is a succession of...
Yesterday, when he met the Apostolic Nuncio, he did say that he would allow the EC to do what they have to do, and that I think that's a bit different from what he said earlier. But when the Apostolic Nuncio met him, he did give him an assurance that he's not interested in interfering with what the EC does, and that whatever the EC does, that nobody can interfere with the will of the people, which is what you expect a president to say. But he did say that yesterday when the Nuncio met him.
Yeah, but Ben, between you and I, words of Nana Akufo-Addo very hollow and very shallow and lacks that substance. It's proven in 8 years that what he says and what he does are virtually poles apart. So I will not take the word of Nana Akufo-Addo to the bank. I will never trust any word that comes from. The man says he's putting his presidency on the line over Ghana, which CTFM, together with other media, you champion in this country. His presidency on the line. What have we seen? The very opposite of her. So his word is worth nothing. That's all I can say. His word is worth nothing. And NDC, we simply do not put any premium.
So you don't trust that he would not interfere. So I just want to understand, because he assured the people that basically the EC will do their job. So are you saying you don't trust that he will do that? So he will do the opposite. He will interfere with the EC.
Ben,
what's the concern?
Ben, in the history of our country, have you ever heard of a president who puts among the commissioners of the Electoral Commission a card-bearing communicator of the NPP? Nana Akufo-Addo did that. The country spoke. NDC wrote to the Council of State and said this is simply not right. So many other people spoke. Did he change? He never changed. He simply does not care. He's tone deaf. He's tone deaf. So for me and for the NDC, we do not trust any word of Nana Akufo-Addo. We don't trust it.
Let's come to the message. Usually when we analyze elections, we say the election, there's a question. What's the question for the election?
Okay.
So you can say 2008 was in a sense a referendum on Kufuor's 8 years.
Okay.
2012, Ghana had some good growth. Mills died, unfortunately. So Mahama was new. So you could say it was whether NDC should continue or not.
Sure.
2008, Mahama just had 2016, Mahama just had 4 years. But it was like the 8 years of NDC was used, and the Doomsop kicked them out. Okay. So 2016 people came back. 2020, I think it's a bit similar to 2012 in the sense that, look, there was
a 4 year
yes, and then a big pandemic. So it was almost like, should the MPP finish or not? Okay. So the question is, what in your view is the question for the 2024 election? to Ghanaians? What are Ghanaians asking, in your view?
All right. Let me say exactly the way we see it. Recently, the flag bearer of the MPP said that this election is going to be about ideas. I'm sure you heard him.
Yes.
This election is going to be ideas. Let me tell you what this election is going to be about. This election is not going to be ideas. It's going to be about principles. It's going to be about values. It's going to be about track record, and track record that is anchored on what they call credibility. So this election is going to be asking the fundamental question of whether Ghanaians need to start, as it were, looking at the principles and the values of those who are in leadership. Why? Because they've seen 8 years that were ushered in with massive promises across all levels. Promises relating to how we could literally transform the economy of Ghana in 18 months. Promises regarding how we can move this country from taxation to production. Promises regarding how we can give to every constituency $1 million. Promises regarding how every village can have one dam in order to transform the agriculture for our country. Promises regarding how a free SHS was going to bring about quality transformation in our educational sector. Those are the fundamental things. And in 8 years, what we've seen today is an economy that literally has been run aground. An economy that is on its knees, an economy that has become a junk economy, an economy where the debt level has reached such level that we cannot believe, an economy that is marked with suffering, pain, an economy where businesses are on their knees and struggling, an economy where there's a lot of disappointment. Now, so what it is that this election is about, it's not about talk. You know what? Anyone can talk. You and I were in this country not too long ago. We had Men's Gold. And Men's Gold was talking about some very creative capacity to be able to let people do investment and make a lot of money. So talk is cheap. Talk is easy. Any crook, any liar can come up with ideas. The real essence of leadership is a capacity to have the principle to be able to say things and mean them. To be able to say, this is what we want to do. And even if you do not achieve it, people do know that you actually meant it, not you deliberately lie to them. And you do not even have the humility to apologize when things go wrong. So, for example, you have a situation where you have massive energy crisis, but the leadership has become so depraved that leadership simply doesn't have the capacity to say, you know what, we have an energy crisis, and we will take this step to be able to resolve the energy crisis. They try to gaslight the country, add insult to our injury by pretending that it's not energy crisis. It's just a few.
So let me just say, you think that this election, Ghanaians are basically looking for credibility? That's what you're saying?
Critical.
Not necessarily the fact that maybe we are hungry and we want somebody to give us a way out of our economic mess. You feel that it's because some people say it's an election, it's an economic election.
Let me explain to you what I mean by that. You see what? Policies must be anchored on principles.
Okay.
Because policies without principles are hollow. Anybody can talk. But the people who do are those who have the capacity first to have the humility to accept what the problem is. And to be able to say, no, this is what we promise to do. And the back of our track record, you can trust us when we say we'll do it. Now, so if it's simply a question of throwing ideas, anyone can come up with ideas. We've had all kinds of ideas over the last 8 years. And what we're saying is the very opposite of what has been said. So essentially, it's about the restoration of character and principle in leadership. Because on the back of that character and principle, you are able to draw ideas to be able to make things happen.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So let's assume that what you're saying about MPP's failure is all true. But does that make NDC the answer? Because you've also heard some young people say they don't trust the political class, that they feel like when Akufo-Addo came to power, he promised them so much and he didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And in fact, some people even say that if he fails, they don't think they'll trust politicians anymore. Do you understand me?
Sure, I've heard
so
that.
the point around credibility,
Yeah.
fine, you may say it may be worse for MPP than you, but it also affects you because there are some people who are looking for a third force. There are some people who are looking for somebody outside the mainstream. Look at Nigeria. Peter Obi came in and he got like a healthy 30-something%. So there's also a certain cynicism against establishment.
Sure.
How do you extricate yourself from that as a party?
No, Ben, I mean, that is valid. And the whole issue of what you call the cynicism the gradual erosion in the trust of politicians. It's not just limited to Ghana. It's all over the world, even in America. Young people will tell you they are losing faith in political leadership, which is true. The issue about Ghana, however, is that never in our history have we had a group that has promised so much and delivered so little. But then I'm saying that's not the only problem. If at least they have the honor and the humility to be able to acknowledge when there are problems and say, you know what, this is the problem, and therefore let us find a way to resolve it. That at least can make people to believe that, you know what, politicians may not always be able to deliver everything they promise, but at least they do not add insult to our injury. Now, so the issue about the restoration of trust becomes principal. It is true that NDC has never been a perfect organization. But then, if you have, for example, President Mahama, and President Mahama, even in the heights of being the president of the country, for example, never ran away from accepting responsibility for Dumso. Even though Dumso was not the creation of the NDC. It's a cyclical thing that's happened. It happened during Rawlings, happened during Kufuor, started during the time of Mills, and then continued during Mahama. He still took that responsibility and resolved it. For example, recently you've heard the conversation where organized labor asked President Mahama, give us a promise regarding how you're going to resolve the issue of our salaries when you come into office. An opposition leader, supposing Bawumia were the one in opposition, you know what he would have done? He would have promised them heaven. He would have told them, you know what, I'm going to resolve all the problem. I'm going to pay you this, pay you that, pay you that. What did President Mahama told them? President Mahama told them that, you know what, we anticipate that it's going to be difficult when we take over. We want to be able to we see a picture now, but we believe that the picture is far worse in reality when we take over on January 7th. So that takes courage. It takes conduct. It takes principle.
But it's also because he has a track record that whatever he says will be judged by. So whoever is coming fresh could say anything. But because he's done 4 years as president, he doesn't have the liberty to promise anything because he already has 4 years of work that people can compare him to. So he has a narrower range of things to say.
We are talking about the flatbearer of the MPP, who actually is the head of the economic management team, who has been in the heart of the governance today, who is still promising what you call heaven when he is in power and capable of resolving a problem. Who is promising that, you know, there is so many, what's the name, the one that they brought that they said I was going to solve all the problem, e-levy. And when I come, I'm going to take e-levy. You are in power. Resolve the e-levy. No, when I come, I'm going to resolve it. The taxes, when I come, I'm going to bring flat rate. Oh, really? You are in power. You have the capacity of doing it now. You are in power. You can do so many things. He is busy still promising heaven when he has the capacity in power to be able to do it now and initiate it. So it's not just about having been there on the part of President Mahama. It's simply about the difference in character.
Okay.
It's about nobility. It's about honor. President Mahama has it, whereas the flatbearer of the MPP absolutely has none. We'll
take a break. We're talking Fifi Kwete. He is the NDC's General Secretary and Campaign Coordinator for election 2024. We've been looking at some general issues. When we come out, we'll talk about what plan do they have. So we on the economic desk think that whoever wins the election is going to have a very, very hard time because a lot of our payments are due. In fact, Ken Thompson said a couple of days ago there's going to be 10 years of pain with this debt restructuring. How on earth does the NDC intend to solve these problems if they win? Stay with us. Welcome back. This is still The Point of View. My guest is Fifi Kwete. He's the NDC General Secretary and Campaign Coordinator for election 2024. Let me give you two pushbacks. Ghana's industry sector grew 4.7% in the first quarter, the fastest in 2 years. So I'm looking at June 18, statistical service. Then I'm looking at an IMF article on Ghana where they say the recovery is starting, we've stabilized, and in fact there's an op-ed written by the country rep which suggests that Ghana is transforming a crisis into a journey towards recovery. So it looks like things are turning on the economy side, which we all admit is the lead issue. All the polls say economy is the number one issue. Is that not an issue for you? I mean, it's good for the economy to recover, right?
Of course.
And industry, we are told, has grown the fastest in 2 years. when you compare the quarters. And it appears all the numbers suggest some stability. There's also been 3 debt exchanges. The domestic has happened. They say we saved $9 billion. The bilateral one, $5.4 billion. Only this week, we are told that Eurobond 2, they are deferring $4.7 billion. So it appears things are changing positively. So the narrative around the economy, which we admit is going to be the lead issue, seems to be turning in their favor at the right time. They still have 6 months. And yesterday, I think Dr. Amin said, Ghana's performance will surprise the world because the recovery has started. Is that not a worry for the NDC?
No, first of all, it should not be a worry at all. Because don't forget, we're talking about a group that inherited an economy in 2017 when they took over. And that economy, though was not a perfect economy, was an economy that many, many governments would be happy to inherit. An economy that, despite the challenges of 2016, the cedi depreciated by a maximum 9.6%. An economy where inflation was 15.4%. An economy where cocoa production that they inherited was almost 1 million metric tons. An economy that had gross reserves of about $6.2 billion. An economy that had, a massive portfolio of what you call investment across every field. An economy that handed over to them surpluses. For example, we give them, what they've been using to anchor their 1D, 1F Exim Bank that was actually handed over to them, which was a...
But it wasn't a Russia. This was an economy that we were in the middle of an IMF program that was supposed to continue, which they did not want to continue. So it wasn't as if the 2016 economy was a tough economy.
How was it?
In fact, you even said that President Mahama admitted that things were tough because after the Doomsday crisis was solved, the energy crisis led to a lot of challenges, which led us to the IMF because we had an energy sector debt overhang, which led us to an IMF program which was to have concluded in 2018. So Ben, I don't know how that's such a great economy.
Ben, I've just mentioned to you the foundation that the MPP inherited.
In comparison to what we are now,
just hold on.
Or to what, to what
MPP
period?
Inherited 2 new energy oil fields. On the back of those alone, the world knew that the economy of Ghana was going to grow at a minimum of 8% in 2017. How many people have inherited an economy? Even before you even put together your economic management team, you already know that the growth for that year was going to be not less than 8%. That's wonderful. If when we took over in 2009 under Prof. Mills, we had foundations that we knew that by the close of 2009, 8% minimum growth was assured, that would have been absolutely heaven. We would have been happy about that. We inherited in 2009 an economy that had budget deficit of 15%. On commitment basis, 22%. An economy that had CDR depreciated by a minimum of 20%. Even that one, they had to sell Ghana Telecom in order to survive, to keep inflation and the CD depreciation at the level it was. An economy where Ghana Commercial Bank was on its knees, store was almost collapsing. An economy that had massive...
That's true, but when you compare 2016 to 2012, when Mills left, our growth in 2011 was 14%. The economy was probably its best in decades in the 2011-2012 period. So I'm just saying that,
but then you must appreciate,
which is why 2016 you lost, because the performance of 2016 was not that great. So when you use that to say that they inherited an economy that was doing so well, we all know that if you compare 2016 to the 4 years before it, it wasn't that great. The dooms of 2014 and 2015 had really affected the economy. No, so it wasn't such a great economy.
Nobody's saying the economy was perfect.
It was very...
I'm just saying that the foundation that was handed over to them at the close of 2016 was a foundation that NDC in 2009 would absolutely have died for. If in 2001 we were taking over, we were inheriting an economy that was giving us 2 oil fields. An economy that was giving us a massive, what you call, infrastructure investment. Ghana Port and Harbours Authority was doing an infrastructure bid of $1.5 billion to make it one of the biggest ports in the whole of Africa. You have airport that was doing that kind of massive thing, Terminal 3. You had what they are calling, they are so disingenuous.
But things were going pretty well for them until
they are
COVID,
so disingenuous. Even what we handed over to them, like whatever railway from Tema to Akosombo, they are appropriating and calling it their own. We solved Doomsday and handed over to them.
Did you finish the rail line?
We secured every money for that construction. Literally handed over to them. But they are so disingenuous, they can't even accept that. But I would say
government is a continuum, right?
No, we've not said government is not a continuum. When we came to power in 2009, we took over what you call a buidam. Kufuor had already secured some money. We still had to raise almost 400 million additional. But we've always said it is a Kufuor project. That is what a government of honor. When people have honor and nobility, that's what they do. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a group that literally has no shame, even lying about projects that don't belong to them. That's why I'm telling you that the fundamental problem of the country is the morality of the group that is in power. That is why the real critical question should be the issue of principles and values. Until we literally purge this country of this level of what I call depravity that has been
but
in office,
a lot of people also
believe
believe that the partisanship is not helping, because for a country which is at this level of development, which needs consensus on, for example, I'll give you an example. When the US wants to take a decision on China and Huawei, even if the Democrats are in power, you hear Republicans leading the charge because they say, we are not going to allow our money to buy things made to empower countries that are opposing us. Okay. Our politics is very divisive. So you are here telling us MPP is the worst thing since sliced bread. Even if that's true, we've had 30 years of a fourth Republican democracy, and young Ghanaians are frustrated after 30 years. It's not necessarily just because of MPP. So if you paint the picture as if it's just MPP is our worst problem, are you not just looking at one side? Because the NDC has also been in power 16 years, as MPP. Sure. So is that not a half partial narrative that it's just because MPP has been terrible, just because they are lies, they don't want to give you? Is that the only problem? Because we've also had a divisive parliament, we don't unite on things that are common. There's so many things we need to do in terms of economic development we don't do, which is not just an MPP
But let me tell you why MPP has particularly been the essential problem. Let me tell you why. You see what? It's true that politics, you always try to literally put your best foot forward in order to let the country feel your platform is a better platform, which is okay. It's like in football. You support Liverpool, I support Chelsea. So you try to banter each other. That's okay. But listen, NPP literally has taken us to a place where every single thing just becomes about votes. So when talking free SHS, it's not commitment to quality education. It's about we need votes. So even if free SHS is literally having massive challenges, well, for example, you, Ben, have been in the forefront of investigation that show that whole free SHS has massive challenges, and that headmasters are literally crying because they can see what is going on. The government literally is making it difficult for them to speak. Why? Because as far as they are concerned, free SHS is all about their electoral survival. When you take a country where everything becomes just about election, you destroy the country. Okay. It's true that we are not perfect in NDC. But if, for example, we were doing something, we are doing fundamentally because we feel is the right thing to be done for country. And if there is a bonus of getting vote in addition, that's okay. That's a bonus. MPP fundamentally believe that everything is just about election. So for them, if there's a problem of the economy, they will lie is not a problem. First 4 years of the economic management of the MPP, what did we not see? We see fiscal numbers being deliberately distorted. Why? Because they were so obsessed with lying to the country about the real situation of our fiscal that they did. So literally, they were presenting one figure to the IMF and telling the country another figure.
Do you think Ghanaians know this or even care about this? Because I'm trying to say to you that yes, there's anything in NDC and MPP.
Yeah.
But there is a feeling that the revolving door has just had two siblings with different fathers by the same mother.
No. I disagree. Let me tell you what it is. There are very many people who are real MPP people who are absolutely shocked by the level of collapse and by the disappointment they see. So often their narrative is, it's true, they are all the same. No, they are not the same. Listen, NDC in 8 years borrowed 120 billion cedis, totality. We came at the time it was about 10 billion. By the time we were going, it was 120. So effectively, we borrowed 110 billion and added to the debt stock. And with that 110 billion, you can see the extent of infrastructural project that we brought to this country. MPP has been in power over the period of, just say, 8 years now. Look at where they took, for example, that national debt to the level where it is today. Where we're talking about debt to GDP now is pushing towards 84%. It actually went higher and is now coming down. Where debt has become so strangulating that we cannot even for the first time honor even debt obligation and interest payment. Where the economy has become such a junk economy that even the pensions of our elderly people have been in jeopardy. Meanwhile, we're talking about this same government that within a period of July 2020 to the end of that year, the totality of money they got from COVID alone was almost in the region of 30 billion. 30 billion means 1/4 of the totality of borrowing that we had, which is 120. They got that for 6 months. Yeah. And in spite of that, they still left this economy with a 15% deficit.
What if they
led that to inflation that went to 50% more?
What if the pushback is that COVID was a once-in-a-generation crisis? Mm-hmm. So the money that came in, a lot of countries also got money. As in, it was, for example, there were World Bank monies available for many countries because people were not working. Yeah. And they needed to directly intervene. So the resources they got was because of a once-in-a-generation problem. Yeah. That's number one. Mm-hmm. And also, because of the damage COVID did to the world economy, they needed much more money to dig us out of the hole. Okay. What will be your answer?
When you and I were in Ghana, how long was the lockdown in this country? 3 weeks. 3 weeks maximum. Countries like Togo, Rwanda, they had a much longer period. But the economy never got destroyed like what we saw in our country. We were in this country. That 30 billion, what did we hear they do? Distributed it to their party people. When you did when the public account decided to go through the record of that what you call COVID money, you saw exactly how they treated it. They treated it as if it was what you call pocket money that they were sharing. Their parliamentary candidates were given and they were literally fighting over it. It tells you the levels of what you call the moral collapse of the regime. Now, so if you can get access to 30 billion for 6 months, which is about 1/4 of the totality of the borrowing of the NDC for 8 years, and you still can lead us into a position where our deficit was what, 15%? We have inflation that's pushing up towards 50%. You have the city that's depreciated, and to the extent that the economy is collapsed today, you simply have no moral authority to even be seeking for another mandate.
Let's move forward. So let's assume we agree on the what. Mm-hmm. Economy is in crisis. Unemployment is high. And all of the rest of the currency is going down. I think what people want to know is the how you will solve it. Okay. So as I keep pointing out, mm-hmm. a lot of our payments are due in the second quarter of 2025. So let's assume Mahama wins. Mm-hmm. He is sworn in. Mm-hmm. Debt obligations are due, mm-hmm. because by the way, the 5.4 billion bilateral was not a debt forgiveness. So this is a deferment of payment. Mm-hmm. A lot of the haircuts and things were just to shift payments to the next government. Okay. So how is the NDC proposing to solve what we all agree on is a big problem?
All right. Which is very, very valid and beautiful question. There again, it's again going back to what I told you. It's again an issue of track record. So we need, for example, to be looking at the track record of NDC. Okay. And see exactly how we went about it when we met difficulties in the past. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, you should also appreciate that the very conversation being led by the flag bearer is a conversation that is trying very hard to, as it were, reduce expectation. It takes a noble and courageous leader to be able to tell a sensitive organization like the trade unions that I cannot give you heavenly promises about resolving your income issues because I need to be able to look at the numbers fair. And on the back of that, we know what is available and be able to use it accordingly. That's the beginning of how you start to solve problems. The humility to say, you know what, I'm not going to make promises that I'm not sure I can meet. Because in opposition, if it were the other side, I can tell you, by this moment, you would have been hearing promises relating to bringing heaven literally down to Ghana. But no, we are showing responsibility. As you mentioned rightly, not only because we have been there in the past, we also have leadership that has far more honor and have more nobility. That's the first one. Two, even the very nature of the way we want to handle government. Mm-hmm. You've heard, for example, President Mahama said, we want, for example, to reduce the numbers in government, which is critical. It's not that you are saving enough money to take care of every problem, but you, for example, are sending a tone to the rest of the country that we want to show a certain level of responsibility, even as far as the numbers are concerned. Not just in terms of numbers of ministers, but also numbers who are being employed, for example, in the Flastafa and places of that nature. Okay. That's another signal that you are sending. That's not all. We are talking about a group that in power, even in 2016, when things were so difficult that we could not even raise 1 cedi from the central bank, which actually was the first time in our history. In every single election that had happened from 1992 all the way to 2012, in an election year, government always had that liberty to sometimes be able to get support from the central bank. In 2016, we didn't get 1 cedi. But still, in that 2016, we still managed this economy so relatively okay that we didn't just stop doing so. which was a major issue, we also left for this country some of the most massive infrastructural projects that you can see.
I just need to point out to you quickly there that if you look at budget deficits since 2000 elections, the lowest was 2004. So,
and do you know why?
Maybe you can explain to me.
It's simple. 2004, it just so happened that for virtually the whole 2001 all the way to 2004, the Kufuor government never had to, for example, service any debt. Because it was basically, it was a debt forgiveness period. So there was really no pressure. And because there was no pressure, they did not simply, there was never the situation where...
So we should discount 2004?
Oh, effectively. I mean, if you are in debt forgiveness,
but don't forget
if you're in a period of debt forgiveness, we cannot really be talking
about... People were not happy. So it was also a decision you took. If you hadn't gone for
I can tell you...
Because there were positions even in his own party about HIPIC.
Let's not even revisit that period. But I can tell you...
Just a quick clarification on that.
I can even tell you that it was even a political program.
But it was political. But he still agreed.
Do you know what they were trying to do? Let's do HIPIC. And we'll blame it on the previous government. Oh, they had mismanaged the economy so much. That's why we had to go to HIPIC. But let's not go back.
But we had a big problem in 99. The gold prices had collapsed. Cocoa was struggling.
Which were external issues.
That's my point. So in 2000 when he came, so he went for HIPIC in 2001.
Yeah.
It was because the economy had challenges. And people didn't agree for him to go, but he went.
Ben, I don't want us to relitigate that.
No, we're not for it. I'm just trying to say that the HIPIC point was a major debate. I remember I was in the university at the time.
But I can still even explain to you. For me, even that is, was again, ineptitude on the part of Kufuor.
But at least he had the lowest deficit. I'm just saying that since 2000.
Ben, I can tell you that if you were in charge of Ghana between 2001 and 2004 with HIPIC, you would have achieved the same.
Fair enough. Let's move on.
You didn't take any extraordinary capacity to make that happen.
So you've spoken about...
so I'm just telling you about...
Realistic promises. I just want to summarize. Realistic promises, like what you said to the TUC. And then you spoke about his...
the track record.
Track record.
But in terms of meeting similar, because we met actually similar challenges, not the same level, but similar challenges in the past.
So, for example, how would you? So there are a couple of points here. The IMF program will be in the middle of it in December 2024, with less money coming, but still with at least a year and a half commitment.
Okay.
Will a Mahama presidency continue the program? Number one. Number two.
Of course, we will.
Where will he raise money from? Because we will be having to pay a lot of things.
No,
what is the proposed way of raising resources?
Oh, in terms of proposed revenue, I mean, you would appreciate that even as of now, this country still is raising revenue. Revenue through the normal tax systems. The problem, as I mentioned, when I was giving, for example, the scenario of how much money they got, for example, during HIPIC, which was in the region of about 30 billion, and still money to land us in the kind of difficulty, it tells you that often the issue is not so much about the resource, but our inability to contain the expenditure. So, for example, you recall, for example, that in 2012, we had a bit of challenge in the final moment because of the pressure that came onto the economy. So even though there was some money, when, for example, you needed to pay some of the arrears regarding the single spine salary and so on, it put a lot of pressure on us. So the capacity to be able to moderate things all happened on the expenditure side. So if you know you're taking over a system where there is a massive challenge with resource revenue, you literally want to reprioritize your expenditure. That's very important.
Okay.
So the reprioritization of expenditure helps you to know it's not every single thing that you...
So you reduce the size of government?
We mentioned that already. Yeah. That is a given.
And then you reprioritize expenditure into what? More
basically you're going to make sure that the most important expenditures are put in the forefront.
Okay.
And those that can wait.
So your priorities will be different from the MPP's priorities.
Naturally.
So the prioritization, the cutting back are two.
Absolutely.
What about taxes? Because some people feel like taxes always come back to one. And by the way, almost all the new governments.
Yeah.
Nigeria has had a difficult reform because of they've had to increase some taxes. They've had to devalue the currency. Kenya is having challenges as well. So the trend seems to be that when a new government comes, they will need more money. And we see that the agitation in this country. So is that something we should be thinking about?
Ben, what I can tell you is that I don't think the people of Ghana, essentially feel that taxation is wrong.
Okay.
I think they feel that when you are in government and you tax us, and you actually use our taxes to do things like, for example, cathedral, or do things like flying in what you call a presidential jet, and show the kind of lifestyle that shows that you yourself are not ready to literally show moderation, you make it far more difficult for them. When you are taxing them, and they see, for example, that another person was in power for 8 years with 120 billion, and that person can show so many projects all over the country, and you have had far more, like 5 times of that period, of that resource, and you simply cannot show the same, then the question starts, can we trust you? So it's about the track record of the government, and saying these people have been in office, and when they were in office, this is the amount of resource they had, this is what they were able to deliver with that resource. When that group comes back in office and shows levels of moderation, has learned from the experience of the past, and is proposing to you a proper reprioritization, and also innovation. Because if you remember, we in office were those who, for example, came up with innovative ideas. That's so, for example, that kind of expansion that you saw at the Ghana Port and Harbour Authority, and you saw also at the Airport of Ghana. We did that without the government of Ghana's debts. We did it on the balance sheet of those organizations, and that clearly is an initiative that we initiated and want to continue.
When we come back, we'll look at some specific policy proposals of the NDC. 24-hour economy appears to be the leading policy promise, but there are others we'll tackle in the next 10 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our guest is the General Secretary of the NDC, Fifi Abikwete, former MP for Ketu South, by the way. Also the coordinator of the 2024 campaign for the NDC. It appears the 24-hour economy is your leading policy because I see the billboards. It's quite similar in a sense to NPP's free SHS. That was the main thing they pushed in 2016. Is it fair, or are there new things coming? Is it fair to say 24 hours is your main?
It's fair to say it's in the heart of...
It's one of your main, which means you admit the economy is the main issue, and 24-hour economy.
Absolutely.
So what does it mean? How does it work?
It's simple. I mean, we are in a country where a lot of people will tell you the problem often had to do with what you call supply bottlenecks. Things that are, as it were, hampering capacity to produce. We're also in a country where government is a massive spender. In fact, the biggest spender is government. So what it simply means is that government is in a position to have a policy of procurement that positively discriminates in favor of local production. Now, so what it means, therefore, is that there's a capacity to incentivize production, as it were, by creating the demand using government procurement. Then there is also the capacity to be able to use policy to be able to encourage a lot more production. So if you're talking about, let's say, pharmaceuticals, for instance, at the moment they are doing a certain level of production. Now, a lot of the conversation that we've had, as President Mahama has had meetings with a lot of these bodies, I mean, they clearly tell you, if, for example, you are able to have tax incentives and also use what you call the tariff system in terms of power, the tariff system in terms of power, and you discriminate positively towards industry, we are capable of producing far more than we are producing. Which means you are capable of employing more people in order to be able to produce. So
it's a productivity aimed policy.
Absolutely. If I would say production aim, because you see, productivity is more about the efficient manner of
because people are thinking more about working
at the production of it.
Let me be fair. When people talk about it, you talk about working at night. That's the impression that's created. That
because most people work one shift effectively during the day.
So
what it means is that if you are having to produce more, it means that many more hours are going to be required, and possibly many more people have to.
But you do recognize that you need to do some things for that to work. For example, cost of inputs have to be lower because the currency has to be stabilized, because most of our producers, unless you're talking about, say, farming.
But that applies to all production.
That's what I'm just saying.
That applies to all production.
So I'm just saying that 24-hour economy will need certain things to be in place.
In fact, the economy as a whole will need certain things to be in place.
Before that can kick in.
So there's nothing really that different in terms of additional production. Because the same thing that affecting normal production is going to be in place for the additional production.
Fair. But do you think people understand it? Do you think the ordinary Gary seller or market woman understands or cares about 24-hour economy as against whether I can afford food to eat? How do you draw the link?
You know, Ben, the thing is that things are not something that people really haven't experienced. It takes a while for people to appreciate it.
Okay.
Now, so for instance, if it starts, for example, being rolled out, and you start seeing, for example, we start from different, what you call, aspects of industry. So you see this industry started. Then the next level started. Maybe the Ghana Port and Harbour Authority started the next one. People are clearly going to be seeing more, especially when a lot of these people you are calling people who are selling, for example, food, now realize that there's such an opportunity to be able to do what I do on a much longer basis, because there are a lot of workers who are still working even at night, who might, for example, need food, and I'm being able to cook and a lot of people will see that benefit. So this is not something that will simply happen across the whole country at a go. Like every new initiative, you start it from a certain nucleus and gradually.
So it's a production-based policy.
Absolutely.
You've said that the candidate does not want to overpromise, but there are many people who think they want more clarity on Galamsey, because as we speak, it's become a national epidemic.
Okay.
So what is his plan to deal with the menace? Water bodies getting polluted, kids don't want to go to school anymore. It's become very serious.
Okay.
So we've heard him say, I've heard, for example, one of his spokespersons say there will be 500 million something spent to deal with it, but I just want to be sure. Is he going to ban it? Is he going to deploy a special task force? Is there a specific plan for dealing with this epidemic of Galamsey?
Okay, Ben, what I will tell you is this. We are going to be able to flesh out our policy proposals much more fully when we adopt the manifesto.
Okay.
But what I can let you appreciate is that, listen, the real problem over this, let's say, 8 years of Akufo-Addo regarding Galamsey is not the lack of ideas. The real problem has been the lack of political will. The lack of political will. When you have people who themselves are in leadership, who literally, including party executives, who literally are at the forefront of this, you naturally weaken your resolve. How are you going to tell chiefs and people in communities that this is what you want to do when they know that you yourself are in the very forefront of it? So that political will is at the heart of it. And again, that ties into what I said in the beginning, that sometimes in this country, we've become used to thinking that it's all about the enunciation of policy. Okay. Ben, I monitor you virtually every morning. And I know, for example, the problem of the country is not even sometimes about ideas. It's about the will to do. The capacity to be disciplined and put your foot down and ensure that things get done well.
So you say
that's one of the
he has the political will to solve it.
Absolutely.
How? By banning it initially, or you do that? You give us.
That's what I'm saying. That in terms of the detailed proposal, that platform will be given. Okay. But one thing you can be sure is this: when he tells you that we would make sure we fully back those policies, that clearly will be done.
My final question to you is: all of us believe that Ghana needs economic transformation, and the view is that to transform, you need consensus on some big issues.
Absolutely.
Because our economy is still vulnerable to a lot of things.
Okay.
But the kind of politics we do, and even this interview tells me that the way you see the MPP and the way the NDC sees the government, it's even if you win, it's going to be the same in terms of it's our turn. People feel like that's not the way to go. Fine, you have to be different from the party you take over from. But there are some issues we have to agree on. As, for example, after. And that's that type of thing. So what is the NDC's promise around consensus building as against competing all the time?
No, Ben, and that is a conversation I love to have. The reason is simple, Ben. I believe that regardless of our differences, the common love we have for our country should unite us at all moments. So, for example, you believe that this should be the approach. I believe that should be the approach. But at a certain level, when it comes to love for country, there should be we should not compromise on that. And on this level, and I've had the opportunity, I remember the recent June 4th, in my speech, I actually said I saluted a lot of patriots who are in the MPP, who in the midst of all these difficulties, continue to do patriotic duty. I can tell you, for example, a lot, for example, of the scandals, which my good brother and MP for a lot of information that comes are coming from patriots of MPP, who simply are sick and tired of what is going on in our country.
So they leak it to him.
I can tell you that they do in interest of our country. So I'm saying that there are still good people in the NPP. Now, so the plan should be to be able to have a coalition of genuine patriots.
All right.
Unfortunately, those who are in charge of the NPP today, their level of patriotism is so low. That's why, first, they need to lose. Two, the country must unite to make sure they are punished, prosecuted, to be an example to even NDC into the future. That you cannot take a country, misgovern it, lie to that country, and do the kind of levels of corruption that we have seen over the last 8 years.
We'll see how that goes. Thank you for talking to us. Good luck. Fifi Kwete is the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. He's also the campaign coordinator. Very, very interesting times ahead. Obviously, the point of view on channel 1 will be at the forefront. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening.